Welcome to a special episode of Startup Health Now. I know I always say they're special, but this one is a bit unusual. We're still talking about celebrating the entrepreneurs and innovators who are transforming health, but instead of interviewing one of the founders from our global community, I'm talking to, drum roll please, the co-founders of Startup Health, my bosses. I wanted to sit down in the studio with Stephen Krein and Unity Stokes because Startup Health has just rolled out an interesting new offering. Well, new isn't quite the right word, as you'll hear. It's more like Startup Health has taken what's worked best over the last 13 years of work and tripled down on it, and then made that product available to way more people.
We've got some really exciting innovations that we've made recently that fundamentally open up our communities and supercharge our Health Moonshot communities in some really exciting ways.
A lot of that comes from learning, right? We're learning what works and what doesn't work. We're learning what's right for the moment in time.
As you'll hear, there are exciting new events to attend and a member app that brings the community together. But at the center is one unifying idea that makes everything else work.
The big secret here is to do it in a way that enables us to be around 100% mission-aligned people.
One of the most important moments comes at the very end of the interview when I ask Steve and Unity who qualifies for these new Health Moonshot communities and how to apply. So stick around. Let's get into it. I'm just glad to have you both on the podcast. And I think the key here is to start big picture. And we've had a fundamental shift at Startup Health, and we want to explain to people what that is and why. So, A, do you agree that we're having a fundamental shift in what Startup Health is or does, or how it should be represented? Or how would you characterize kind of our moment in time right now? And Steve, maybe you start.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think about it as a fundamental shift. I think we've been doing founder community for entrepreneurs who are working on transforming healthcare since the day we opened our doors in 2011. I think we have really learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work, and what kind of support and wisdom and connections and learning are useful to founders who are building digital health, biotech, and life science companies. I think I'd probably describe this as the continued evolution of our thinking about how to go really deep with founders who are working on solving similar problems or challenges that we're facing around the world, whether it's tackling Alzheimer's disease or type 1 diabetes. And I think the real magic is that we're going deeper with founder community. I don't think it's a shift. I think it's a deeper focus on specific communities within the global community.
The reality is we're on a mission to achieve health moonshots, and we've been on a mission to achieve health moonshots since day one, 2011. And at the heart and soul of that has always been collaborative communities. Collaboration, we had a formula we outlined the day we launched, which was health transformers times the network effect equals the transformation of
healthcare.
Yep. Right? And health transformers, these are the extraordinary superheroes of our time. These are entrepreneurs. These are founders. These are the builders and makers that are innovating and creating the future every day, especially in health and healthcare. But the network effect is this extraordinary unlock, an exponential unlock of community, collaboration, working together. And Steve, I couldn't agree more with what you said, because while we test and tweak and try to always get better to improve how we can collaborate more effectively, the fundamental basis of what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, and how we're trying to do it is still the same. Now, that being said, we'll get into some really exciting innovations and I think improvements that we're trying to make along that journey to make collaboration more effective and efficient and better for everyone involved.
I was just going to say, you said we're not shifting over here, we're diving deeper. And you mentioned, Steve, the idea of Health Moonshot communities becoming more central than ever. Talk to me about what a Health Moonshot community is and why that is something worth spending this kind of emphasis on.
I probably have to peel back a little bit towards what what a founder community is before I go into what a health moonshot community is, because my eyes opened up and my mind, quite frankly, exploded when I first got wind of the concept of founder communities back in the 90s when we were building our first company, Webstakes. And I got introduced to a number of friends who were members of YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And I saw this global peer network of founders and CEOs building really large companies that were connected together in a really, really unique way that created trust and support and access that was really almost a privileged room to be a part of, a rarefied air where you could know that if you get into a room with the other members of the community, or you were to meet a member of the community around the world in a different country, there was almost like a secret handshake. You knew that you could trust them, rely on them, and ask them for help, and vice versa. And that opened up my eyes to what I think changed the trajectory of not only my entrepreneurial career, but my view of the power of community. And it was this idea that there's like-minded people who you can sit down with, and a lot of entrepreneurs and founders can't talk to their team or even their partner about a lot of topics, but in a founder community, it's a safe space to do that. And so I've been a member of YPO since the late 90s, and that shaped my thinking around founder community. And then I got, I think, another dimension to that when I joined Strategic Coach, probably right around the same time. And I saw the power of a founder community where there was coaching and guidance and support and recalibration. And those two communities, I think, began the journey of like seeing the power of leaning on people who have similar ambitions, similar drive, similar goals, similar problems, similar challenges, and seeing the power of what happens when you put all of them together in a way that unlocks, I think, the power of what Unity was describing, which is the network effect of being in a community. And so the lead into health moonshot communities needs that framework of founder communities have been around for decades. I think YPO was founded in the 40s or 50s, and there's lots of different variations of YPO and EO and Vistage. And the power of those communities are people from different backgrounds and experiences coming to, and industries and businesses coming together and sharing generally different challenges related to their business, but you're not sitting next to people all working on the same problem and the same thing. So that was one of the unlocks to like really the launch of Startup Health back in 2011, the need to build a community of just founders working on transforming healthcare. So imagine it being like a YPO for just entrepreneurs working on problems that everybody's facing in their health, but the uniqueness of really the community coming together around that.
We all see this in our own lives. We're all involved in communities, and you see the power of communities. I grew up on a farm in a farming community in Iowa. And I use the word community very specifically here because neighbors help each other. If you're snowed in and your neighbor has a tractor and they can plow you out, they come over and help you out. There's a big Amish community down the road from where I grew up, and I would watch them sometimes do these barn raisers where the entire community would come together and in one day do a year's worth of work raising one family's barn, everybody contributing, helping each other, right? So just this construct of community in general is so incredibly universal and powerful. And then I think when you kind of to lead in the magic that I think we were really inspired by came from NASA and the original Moonshot, because when you can align the power of community and collaboration with a mission, a bold, audacious mission, and everyone is mission aligned around that goal, all of a sudden it takes community to a whole other level. And Steve, maybe you share a little bit about our inspiration with the health moonshot from that genesis there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because we talk a lot about health moonshots, health moonshot communities now that you were referring to, Logan, and it's some facts that I learned along the way as I dug into the original moon landing in the 60s, and it was fascinating to see that when JFK made that famous vision statement in 1961 or 62 at Rice University around we're going to land a man on the moon and bring him safely back for the end of the decade. The technology didn't exist for that to happen. The funding didn't exist for that to happen. The capabilities, the collaboration, nothing was laid out except there was decades prior a lot of energy, time, and money spent on research. But that catalyzing statement that he made around landing a man on the moon and bringing him safely back created what really snowballed into a collaboration between more than 400,000 people across 20,000 organizations and agencies, all contributing their unique capabilities to the mission. Everybody had a different role. Somebody was working on the spacesuits, and somebody was working on the cameras, and somebody was working on every aspect of every part of that moon landing. And whether they were a janitor sweeping the floors of NASA or the astronauts that were actually, going up across all the different Apollo missions, they all felt like they were part of a massive collaboration. And so what occurred over that decade was really the largest collaboration of its kind. And so when we think about curing Alzheimer's disease or tackling diabetes, type 1 or type 2, or any of the cardiometabolic diseases, it seems as though applying the same framework of collaboration, mission-driven collaboration, seemed very apropos. And so a lot of our framing is around how do we unlock that same collaboration around missions that we all know are shared by hundreds, if not thousands, of entrepreneurs and innovators and funders and partners around the world that want to help. But prior to this, everyone seemed to be working alone. It seems as though there's a lot of silos, not only locally, but within universities and industry and payers and providers and pharmaceutical companies and startups and big companies and small companies. And so these health moonshot communities are our approach, unique approach to bringing together the founders and the CEOs and the entrepreneurs and innovators at the center of this transformation, and then wrap around all of those stakeholders the kinds of collaborators they need, funders and customers and partners and experts. But really, the big secret here is to do it in a way that enables us to be around 100% mission-aligned people. When you look to your left, when you look to your right, when you look on the screen, you know that everybody's on the same mission you are.
Yeah, you mentioned EO and YPO, and we all know that communities rise and fall by the quality of their members. They're all about people. So talk to me about the vetting process. You just said 100% mission aligned. Obviously, that's a bit of an intangible, can be challenging to kind of know exactly where people are at in their mindset, or maybe there's, a great way to do it. How do you vet for a community like this?
I think there's a couple different dimensions. One is about the people who are in the community, the members, if you will, who are going to show up and be a part of the community. And then I think the next dimension is what they're working on, the company that they're bringing together to work on this challenge or this problem. And so we spend a lot of time talking about a couple of very simple things that we look for in the characteristics and the mindset and the attitude of the founders that are applying. Do they have the health transformer mindset, the mindset that not only says I'm thinking transformationally about a really long-term vision that is ambitious and seemingly unachievable alone, but through collaboration is possible. And so it's this possibilist mindset, this transformational mindset, that is one of the key ingredients to what we look for in those first interactions with the founders, or when we watch their video, or many of them we know already, we see them in action. They have this attitude and this mindset and this energy that we always call batteries included. They come fully filled with energy to give to the mission and to every meeting they go into and every time they get on stage or have a meeting or talk to their team or talk to patients. They just have an energy about them that is naturally geared towards being collaborative, being, really energetic to be around, and have the skills and capabilities that really are required to add to the mix of what's needed to achieve the moonshot.
Well, first of all, I think every great community, as you said, Steve, starts with people. That's really the core. And when you link or tie that community together with purpose, an aligned mission, and it's so clear what mission everyone's on, it transforms an average community into an extraordinary exponential community, one that can literally achieve anything. And we've seen this throughout history, where the boldest challenges have been tackled by mission-driven communities. Back at when we first started Startup Health, we talked about building a global army of health transformers. Army is just another word for mission-aligned community, where everyone is marching together towards the same mission, right? And how do you filter for that? I mean, it comes down to the ethos, as Steve framed very perfectly, the health transformer mindset. Does everyone in that community, are they aligned with that mission? First and foremost, why are they there? What's their purpose, right? That's number one. And then two, this batteries included construct, I think, is really fundamental, because it's binary. People either are willing to give more than they take, or they take more than they give. It's binary. And when you have a mission-driven community where every member is batteries included, meaning they give more energy, they give more than they take, it creates a fusion. It creates an exponential energy that makes that community unstoppable. So I can walk into a room now and see someone, and in my gut understand, wow, my energy is being drained away, or wow, I'm being infused with energy from an individual. And you can almost identify it instantly when you put this framework. Notice, This isn't about the business model. It's not about some fancy technology. It's not about, how much money someone has in their bank account. This is about the purpose, the passion, and really the batteries that these people come with to the community. And that's what really gives it the energy and what we look for.
Yeah. And this filter is the first filter. It's not the only filter, but if they don't have what we just spent the last few minutes talking about, there's no reason to go to the next filter. And that's unique in its approach to building the community, because there are a lot of really great companies and technologies that don't have founders or leaders that we would want in the community, or the other members of the community would gel well with. And so the energy up front on this really helps out. But the other dimension is about the company, not about the business model or the technology, but the company and what they're working on, who's on the team that is either, founding or co-founding the company with them, or who's already on the team, who are the advisors and funders and partners of the organization, who do they surround themselves with? And then, of course, the technologies and the patents and the uniqueness of the capabilities of those organizations are important. But what we found over the last 13 years of building Startup Health is that across the more than 550 companies that have joined the broader Startup Health community over the last 13 years, what's really fascinating is things change about the companies. What is important today, not only from the market, but from the customers and their response and their feedback. I mean, they evolve and change business models, and the technologies like AI, completely upend what they were working on. And so companies evolve, and if they're good, they'll iterate their way to customer and product market fit. They will iterate their way to growth and scalability, or they won't. But we found that if we put too much energy on all of these characteristics of the company when they apply, as you get to know the companies and the founders, if you're not flexible enough to let them figure out how to commercialize, scale, and grow, then you're not really supporting what ultimately the long-term missions are all about, which is we're trying to prevent, better manage, diagnose, and cure these diseases. We're trying to do things that far extend beyond a business model and far extend beyond the current capabilities of most of the companies that are being started in any given year. And so when you put these two sides together, the individuals and the members and the companies, you really have both sides of the requirements. And the kind of funding, whether it's a few $1,000,000 in revenue or grants or venture capital or strategic funding, or you're bootstrapped, one of the things you have to be able to do is be able to work every day on the business. And so this is a community of founders who have established some sort of foothold in customers, grants, venture capital, strategic capital, angel investors, or even self-funding, but are able to put the investment into building the team and beginning to build the proof points towards ultimately commercializing and then through commercialization scaling what it is they're working on.
What I want to ask you is a lot of talk about collaboration. Collaboration is wonderful. People love collaboration. We had to have collaboration to get to the moon and back. But the devil's in the details of how you actually cultivate collaboration and a culture of collaboration. So talk to me about, and this is a way of getting into the actual program. What do people get when they join the Startup Health community? What are some of those events? What are some of those things that actually cultivate collaboration?
So I too would jump right to that historically, because what I always felt about founder communities, YPO included, was, how does it work and what are the benefits and all these different things. And what I've come to really appreciate, and it's one of the things that over the last 2 years we have learned a lot about and mastered with the launch of these next generation health moonshot communities around type 1 diabetes and more recently Alzheimer's disease, is that what's really magical is just pausing as soon as we finish the sentence. 100% mission aligned founders and CEOs. Hard stop. You're in a room with founders and CEOs who are building companies that are trying to solve different aspects of the care continuum for Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. Just that idea that you're in a room of rarefied air, of unique capabilities and unique access, is so significant that if I didn't even tell you all the different activities that we do together, the different events that we have, the peer circles that we bring entrepreneurs together in every month, the office hours that we host on a weekly basis to help the founders both connect with each other, but also support through our team and our experts. If we didn't talk about the in-person events that happen at conferences, just the idea that you're in a unique room, virtually or in person, that has curated people based on their mindset, based on their companies, based on their mission, that alone is significant. And I have a real deep appreciation for this idea of 100% mission-aligned people in the community. That makes a huge difference.
I'm curious if either of you have seen it in action, where you have just seen the power of this group being in the same virtual or physical room together.
I mean, well, I think that's a great question or comment, because when we started Startup Health, we have had over a dozen health moonshots, right? But they've all been integrated together and lumped together. And one of the, I think, extraordinary innovations that we've learned from over the past at least 2 years is going really, really deep into each moonshot community, each health moonshot community. So the type 1 diabetes community, the Alzheimer's community. And Steve, maybe you can talk about some of the magic, some of the learning, some of the things we've seen as a result of going really, really deep. Of course, all the constellation of health moonshots are very integrated, and it's one larger startup health community. But when you go deep, mission by mission, it unlocks another level of opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's not that different than Unity's description of community in Iowa, or community if you're you play tennis with your local tennis team, or you're in a church. Being with other people who um, share similar values, similar ambitions, similar goals, if you will, makes a really big difference. And there is something very unique about when I think back to 2011. It was pretty unique to build a community of just digital health and health innovation entrepreneurs. Like, hard stop. There were so many different types of founders out there, but our first iteration of Startup Health, the early stages of building the community, it was just great to be in a room full of other health-focused entrepreneurs. Hard stop, that was great. Before we even started organizing them into these health moonshots, the idea of knowing that we all care about transforming health or healthcare, that was great. When you put people in a room back then, there was a shared language about what we were talking about: payers, providers, pharma. You're talking about business models. You're talking about, back in the day, Obamacare. All these different things were like shared languages, shared challenges, shared opportunities, and shared capabilities. Those were like some of the unlocks. And so when you flash forward to today and you ask that question about how does that magic happen, I think it's a timeless question and answer that can be asked about any community. But right now in 2024, 2025, we're living in a moment where it's not just enough to be focused in a community on healthcare. We're seeing an unlock when we do founder intro calls every week or two, and we bring together complete strangers who are working on type 1 diabetes, or working on youth mental health, or working on women's health challenges. As soon as you put them in a virtual room together and they say hello and they tell you what they're working on, they instantly share a language. They instantly share the same kinds of customers or challenges or capabilities or problems or clinical trial issues, whatever it might be. And it's almost like a magical game of pinball where all of a sudden you just see the connections. It's around wisdom. It's around people they know or organizations they know or need access to. And it's about capabilities. And every single phone call, every single Zoom session, every single workshop, every single meetup at a conference, the magic happens just in the first 5 minutes of talking and knowing the secret handshake for each other, because we're both talking about the same thing, or all three or four of us are. And so you feel supported, you feel heard, and most importantly, the unlock is we all leap, weeks, months, or years ahead of other conversations because we're in that unique spot where the curation has already been done.
Interesting. My last question for you is, I want to make sure folks listening to this know how and if they should take action on this, because I know that one of the shifts that we're discussing here is how we build the community and who might take part in the community. So maybe Unity, I'll start with you, but you can both answer. How would you hope that folks listening to this would think about taking part, joining, becoming a member? What would you want them to do?
If you're a mission-driven founder building a health moonshot company, you should go to startuphealth.com and apply, check out our health moonshots and apply to join one of these communities. One of the things I'm most excited about, and we haven't talked about yet, is how we're opening up access to these communities. We've been very, very thoughtful about creating a membership model that enables the best of the best to really join these communities, to raise their hands, make it frictionless, accessible, and to be a part of these communities. So over the years, we've tried a lot of different routes and angles and solutions to try to build these communities. And what I'm most excited about now is we've really worked hard to go deep community by community, so that there's a food is medicine community, there's a cardiometabolic community, there's a women's health community, I should say health moonshot community. We've got over a dozen of these health moonshot communities. And if you're working on a health moonshot not yet represented, we want to meet you. we want you to be the founding member of one of our next Health Moonshot communities. So Steve can talk a little bit more about the membership model and how we're opening this up. But I'm really, really excited because, over the years, oftentimes it hasn't been easy for founders or startups to get into these types of mission-aligned communities. So we're really trying to open that up for the right types of batteries included founders that are a good fit for each of these missions.
Yeah, I think I want to touch on one aspect of these communities that I think adds a different dimension to it, not just being about the founders talking to each other, because we build these mission-aligned impact boards for each of our communities, and we hold quarterly board meetings and showcases to spotlight the innovators to the stakeholders, the funders, the academics, the philanthropists, the venture capitalists, the strategics that want to support these founders. And so in answering your question about who should apply and who wants to join, it's like, if number one, don't want to go at it alone and you want to do it with other people who are on a shared mission with you, and you want an opportunity to not only get support from the other founders, but get introduced to and get exposed to through these impact boards and showcases, but also through what I think we've done really well, led by you, in fact, over the last many years, is the idea of our media reach that I think through newsletters and social media and video on YouTube through Startup Health TV and our podcast, Startup Health Now, that you're listening to now, I think we have created an incredible active audience of people who are reading and watching and listening to the stories of progress that the founders in our communities are making, and they're reaching out to them and they're engaging with them. And so the big unlock here is founders who want to be a part of a unique peer network, but also have unique exposure to the broader audience of mission-aligned stakeholders they need access to. Those are the people that should apply, and the founders and the CEOs that should apply to join one of our Health Moonshot communities. If you don't want to collaborate and you don't want to do it with others, then it's not going to be a good fit. It's not going to be for either of us, by the way, or any of the people in the community. But what we've found is that just like YPO has been around for decades, I think the idea of especially in a post-COVID world, people being connected together in a regular way with other people who have that shared language, the shared needs, really is a big unlock. And so it's as Yuni said, an easy visit to go over to startuphealth.com and check it out, and engage on one of our founder intro sessions. And in 5 minutes into the hour-long session, you'll get it really quickly.
Yeah. I've watched some recordings from those sessions, and I've seen the magic happen early on. Sorry, Unity?
I was just going to very quickly illustrate this with an example. We have an Alzheimer's Health Moonshot that's championed with Gates Ventures and ADDF, the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation. And they're just extraordinary collaborators and partners right there. They are funding hundreds, dozens of extraordinary technologies and companies. Well, we're helping bring that community together. We already have over 20 teams, research teams, innovator teams, technology teams, working together on the very critical mission of eradicating Alzheimer's and related dementias. We're now opening that up to the next 20 members to join that thriving community and really supercharge it. In fact, we thought it would take us about a year to get the first 20 in that community. We did it in the first 3 months, and which is why we're now expanding that community, because we're seeing so much progress so quickly. We're seeing the connections happen by bringing these innovators together. They're all helping each other, learning from each other, and it's just absolutely speeding up the progress that everyone's making. So we want more of that across all of our Health Moonshots.
Very nice. Well, this will have to be the first of many interviews where we kind of go even deeper on this topic. But I appreciate you guys taking the time, pulling the curtain back, explaining what we're working on, and how people can get involved. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Logan.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Startup Health Now. We'll be back again with another episode next week.